All right, Frank, Matt Hughes is talking about fighting again. Did you hear about this?
No.
All right, so he is talking about fighting again. He, well, sort of. He did.
Is he going to be part of the Legends League?
Well, yeah. If Bellator's putting a Legends League together, so here's the way this story went.
Oh, wait a minute. So he got cut by UFC, and now he's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and fight for.
Yeah, you can see where this is going now. So here's the report. Matt did Joe Buck's show, and he has like a TV show. And the first thing is, I think they're taping for season 3, which is going to air like in the fall of this year. So that's kind of weird when you're taping that far ahead with a fighter. I mean, it's like seems like the interview could be really obsolete by the time you went on the air with it. But anyway, so he apparently said during that interview that he would consider coming back if he knew for sure there was an opponent that he could defeat. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, maybe a rematch with Royce Gracie because Royce is, signed up with Bellator right now. First of all, what do you think about that idea, about the idea of him coming back if he were to do it?
I think he would probably be successful at it. I mean, the guy was always a really good athlete. I don't know him. I mean, I know Matt. If we see each other, backstage,
Yeah.
we say hi, talk for a few minutes. I've always liked him. He's a very nice guy. But I haven't been in the gym with him, so I don't know if he's one of those guys that's heavily injured. If his body's beat up, I don't know. So, I mean, if he's relatively healthy, the guy, one of the attributes that he had, besides just being super tough, was the guy was ungodly strong, pound for pound. Almost everybody I ever talked to that rolled with him or had fought against him talked about how just, when he just grabbed your wrist, it hurt, And so I think everybody who knows sports knows that, strength and power are one of the last things to leave an athlete. And so he's still going to be as strong as ever. And, and his technique was always super sharp with grappling. I mean, his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling and his stand-up led into that very well. It wasn't like he was ever a sitting duck. And so I think that he would actually, barring not fighting somebody who's, a top 2 or 3 guy in the world, him making a comeback against somebody else who's also a veteran who's not any longer inside the, the pinnacle of their career. I think that's, Matt's a very dangerous guy.
He hasn't fought since 2011. He officially retired in 2013. That Royce Gracie fight was at UFC 60 back in May of 2006. But he told Joe Buck that he is, quote, in talks to fight again. And sources, this is on MMAfighting.com, according to their sources, say that Matt Hughes, who's 43 now, by the way, has been talking to Bellator about the idea of fighting. Well,
yeah, I actually think he would do really well. I think it'd be great for Bellator. He's a name guy. The only thing that strikes me, when he retired, was that his last fight on his contract? Or did he still have a contract with the UFC for another fight and then retired? I wonder if that could come back to...
Interesting.
Do you know what I mean? Because if you retire and there's a fight on your contract, you come out of retirement, the UFC might come back and say, well, hold on a second.
Right.
You still had a fight or two, but you retired,
That's interesting. I'm not sure about that.
I don't remember the details either.
To me, the first thing that came
What was his last fight? Was it Thiago Alves?
Is that right? I have to look that up. You got a free phone over there if you don't mind. Mine's busy running the live stream. The thing that came to my mind about this, though, regardless for a second of whether or not he's going to be competitive, is he had that executive vice president deal with the UFC, like Chuck Liddell had. It was rumored to be a 6-figure job that was largely symbolic.
Oh, he fought a couple times after Thiago Alves. He then came back. He beat Matt Serra, beat Renzo Gracie, beat Ricardo Almeida, and then he lost to BJ Penn And then his last fight was a loss to Josh Koscheck.
Koscheck, that's what it was.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's
I think
right.
he got knocked out in the second round or the end of the first.
Was that Koscheck's last win?
Yeah, it was the last second of the first round.
Yeah.
I don't know. There we go. So here, Wikipedia trivia.
Yeah,
was that
yeah.
Josh Koscheck's last win?
Yeah, I know it's been a while for Josh. Well, the thing that came to my mind while you're looking that up.
Second to last win.
There you go.
Matt Hughes was a win, and then he fought Mike Pierce. And then since then, he lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights.
Okay. Well, the thing that came to my mind about this was, Hughes, Chuck Liddell, Forrest Griffin, they had the vice president, executive vice president deals.
Holy shit. If Bellator gets Chuck Liddell to fight.
Well, no, this is where I'm going with this, okay?
Measure Chuck Liddell and get Tito to come back out of retirement?
I know. Listen, this is what I'm talking about. Is like the UFC had, and I know this was positioned, and I think, truthfully so, as like, they're wanting to take care of these lifelong company guys and all this, but there's also a little bit of an insurance policy factored in there, right? What you're doing is if you pay Chuck Liddell, Matt Hughes, Forrest for that matter. Forrest is still getting paid because I think he's a little more involved on the day. He shows up to work. I saw him at UFC 209, so he's out there. He's out there working. But with Hughes and Liddell, you're paying them a 6-figure annual income, and so what you do is you let them age out of that deal.
And by paying somebody, you take away their drive. Because these guys have both won titles multiple times. They're successful. So I don't think the itch to go out there and prove themselves is ever going to be a problem. But you get an athlete who's still able to perform and make money, and now he's not making money. Well, now there's incentive. It's like, okay, well, shit, honey, the bills are behind. We can't go on vacation at the end of the month. You know what? I can go take a fight again. I could go fight. And it's like, oh yeah, but if you pay a guy, then you take out that incentive and that urge to possibly step back in there and fight.
Well, you do that, and then let me flip it around for a second, because I'm sure there's some people, that is true, but there's another side of it where, because some people are probably hearing that and going, yeah, but if you're not hurting for money, then you're probably not thinking that way. But you might, just the competitive side of you might want to do it, but if you're getting 6 figures a year not to fight, so you have to go tell your wife, listen, I want to take another fight, and by the way, I have to forfeit the 6 figures, then they're probably not going to be on board with that. So to me, what you're doing is, you're, as a company, the UFC was, taking care of guys who deserve to be taken care of, but at the same time, buying themselves an insurance policy that these guys are going to stay company guys. I think you would have been somebody that had this new ownership thing not happen and all that, would have probably been in line for something like this at some point, because they probably would have liked to have seen you fight out your entire career in the UFC, and then for the remaining, let's say you even fought into your early 40s, for the remaining 7 years, 8 years, let's just keep going until you're literally physically too old to even think about it. And that, is worth the money that they paid you to make sure that somebody like Bellator wasn't able to trade off of a legend's name. And with this, it seems like that's kind of what they're opening themselves up for, right?
Yeah, that's huge. If Bellator goes out, they already have Hughes under contract. I think Henzo's still out there too. There's quite a few matchups that I think people, especially hardcore MMA fans, jiu-jitsu fans, would find extremely intriguing. And, Matt Hughes has a very recognizable name, and he hasn't even been active for the last 5-6 years. You
already got 2 pieces to the puzzle in, I know Tito said he's done, but, you still got Tito now able to fight for Bellator. You got Hughes in that fold over there with the Shamrock fight that he just fought. You bring in Hughes, and then, like I said, you just said if you could tempt Chuck Liddell into coming back. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter that it's not going to be anything like it was. All that's going to matter is the ratings it's going to do on Spike TV, and I think those guys over there have proven.
We would be watching.
Yeah, we would. We'd be talking about it. It's...
It hasn't even occurred, and we're talking about it.
It just seems like, and we've had this WME IMG discussion a number of times here on the show, and to be honest, I don't know. For all I know, there's a couple of guys in that company that are lifelong UFC fans, and they know even the most obscure names. But my instinct, Frank, is that these are all accounting decisions. We paid a lot of money for this company. We need to lower costs. We need to try to make back some of this money as quickly as we can. So everything is probably translating, as it does in the corporate world, to that kind of shorter term picture as opposed to longer term. And what's getting lost in the mix is, oh, you mean if we only pay out this guy for another 4 or 5 years and have him be a brand ambassador, then we don't have to worry about him trading on a legendary name over at our rival's organization. I think there's just some I think there's some softballs being tossed their way.